It's another day to do 55 minutes of business. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Business Morning. I'm Ini John Mekwa. And as usual, we start from what's going on in the global oil space. This morning, looking at the price, we see that oil is expected to stay down because of global supply, ample one, and amid weak demand as the market weighs the prospect of higher Venezuelan crude output following the U.S. capture of the president, Nicolai Maduro. Brent for this morning we see is, down just about the same level we had at afternoon yesterday. So it's dropped 0.47% to $61.47 a barrel. WTI is also down about 0.5%, $58.01 a barrel. Oil prices responding to major geopolitical events such as the U.S. military action in Venezuela. That's a major one. And ongoing strikes on Russian energy infrastructure. They had been surprisingly muted, suggesting fundamental demand-supply factors have remained the key concern at this time in this early part of 2026. Still talking about oil now, local refinery operators under the Crude Oil Refineries Association of Nigeria, that's CORAN, they've challenged fuel importers and have clashed with marketers over the continued importation of refined petroleum products, while local refiners called on the federal government to restrict fuel import and prioritize domestic refining retailers under the aegis of the Petroleum Products Retail Outlet Owners Association of Nigeria, DFA. They're saying that the importation window should remain open for the whole of 2026. CORAN had held that imports should only serve as a balancing mechanism, but Petron is arguing that willing traders should be allowed to import fuel to prevent shortages. In position paper titled True Faith in Nigeria's Downstream, while local refinery companies built while importers traded, CORAN Publicity Secretary Iche Idoko says that commitment to the sector should be measured by capital invested and long-term risk exposure and not trading activity. Now we leave the oil space now and go to the market yesterday, which did extremely well at the close of trade yesterday. We hit new highs. The oil share for the very first time went to 159,218.22, and the market cap exceeded 101 trillion naira for the very first time. And if you look closely, you see it's really close to 102 trillion naira. A lot of it's driven by the fugas, that's the big banks. They drove that, but we also had Boa Cement contributing a lot to it. But top trades or top gainers yesterday we saw was NSL Tech, Champion, and Fitson. Those also caught the interest of investors. While for the flip side, we had Julie Pharmacy, Keja Hotel, and Soon Assurance. They were the top losers, but top trades had Tantalizer, Zenith Bank, and Link Assure. Well, around the market, the federal government has announced a shift from direct economic intervention to capital de-risking and private sector-led growth model as part of its 2026 growth acceleration and investment mobilization strategy. The new direction was disclosed in a statement by the Minister of State for Finance, Dr. Doris Uzoka-Anite, who said that the strategy is aimed at unlocking large-scale domestic and foreign private capital by lowering investment risks, removing policy distortions, and strengthening execution discipline across key sectors of the economy. According to Ms. Uzoka-Anite, the government is seeking to move from macroeconomic stabilization to sustained economic expansion, driven largely by private investment rather than public spending. Meanwhile, the Nigerian Economic Summit Group's report shows that Nigeria's business environment sustained its 12-month consecutive expansion streak, although the current business performance index moderated slightly in December 2025. The Business Confidence Monitor Index stood at 112.0 points in December, and that's down from 113.3 points in November 2025. And 11.2 index points above its December 2024 level. Despite the continued expansion, businesses faced several binding constraints during the month, including limited access to finance, inadequate power supply, policy uncertainty, high rental costs, and persistent exchange rate challenges. The sectoral breakdown indicates that all 5 major economic activities remained in the expansionary zone during the month, although 3 sectors recorded declines relative to November 2025. The agriculture sector posted the strongest improvement, rising by 9.6 points to 112.9 index points, while manufacturing had 117.9. It also recorded a marginal increase. By contrast, trade, however, at 123.8, non-manufacturing 101.8, and services 104.3 declined compared to their figures in November 2025. The board of Lotus Bank has appointed Dr. Isiaka Ajani Lawal as its Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer effective December 2025. The appointment was disclosed in a statement made available to journalists. And it also shows that Lotus Bank is one of the non-interest banks in the country, with the latest appointment coming on the heels of the retirement of the bank's founding Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer, Mrs. Kafilat Araoye. Appointed as the pioneer MD CEO of Lotus, Araoye played a key role in laying the foundation for Lotus Bank's successful market entry and operational growth. Under her leadership, the bank achieved key milestones that set the tone for its current leading position in Nigeria's ethical banking space. The new tax law is still very much in the horizon in Nigeria. It's just a couple of days into its implementation. It's our duty here on Channels Television to keep you informed. So we share some of those high points and highlights of the new tax law that we think you should know. That's right. Those are some of the high points, some of those exemptions that may be of benefit to you, and we'll keep just putting it in your face so that you get used to those new provisions in Nigeria's tax law. Now, we're still discussing the tax law, but we're looking at it from the other side. So we've been talking about how to make this work and the advantages of the new law, which should expand Nigeria's tax net and get more revenue to the government. But of course, the issue of lack of trust from the people to the government is still very prominent, and that's why we hear a lot of pushbacks on social media and when you have conversations about the law. So let's look at it from the other side. How can this gap be closed? How can the government win the trust of the people? What is going to happen when the government has more revenue? What can the people expect? And what should the people be doing to hold the government accountable? Well, that's a conversation we'll be having with Mr. Awal Musa. He's the Executive Director, Civil Society Legislative Advocacy Center, CISLAC. He's also the head of Transparency International in Nigeria. Mr. Musa, good morning and welcome to the program.
Thank you. Good morning and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too. I think I should begin by asking your views on the new tax law, all you've heard, conversations you've had and heard.
Thank you very much. Personally and organizationally, we think it is necessary to have tax reform in our laws and the implementation and compliance. This is because of the lacunas we have in the various laws that you have in the country. So government coming up to harmonize the various laws that we have to hopefully ensure that there is more unified tax law in the country that will work for everyone. We think it was necessary, and that is why we supported the effort to reform our tax law in Nigeria. However, we supported it with some caveats, with some concern that we have expressed during the discussion and the public engagement that we also engage government, legislature, and the Nigerian people. As we all know, many big men and women in this country, they don't pay taxes. As we all know, many companies get what they call tax waivers or tax holiday. All sorts of allegedly fraudulent tax waivers are given to some people who have link in government. And therefore, if we are going to have any new tax law, it must close those gaps. But more importantly, what Nigerians are asking and talking is the absence of clarity in this law. Number one, the question of legitimacy, arising from the controversy from the National Assembly, claiming that what they have passed is not what is being gazetted. This must be addressed in order to restore sanity and public trust. Again, many Nigerians, as you know, are very skeptical about this desperation that also government show. This is because over the years, many Nigerians, they don't believe in government promises and commitment, and because many at times government do also fail Nigerians. For example, Nigerian government withdraw fuel subsidy, and they say that the saving will be utilized to improve and better the life of Nigerians. Today, 2 years after fuel subsidy removal, the saving, the large chunk of the saving, has not in any way translated into improvement in terms of healthcare system in the country, in terms of education, in terms of energy, in terms of water and sanitation, and even in many instances, infrastructural development. So this is why many Nigerians are believing that the absence of transparent and accountable utilization of the taxes will also follow the same way, the way this subsidy saving were made. And government must do everything possible to convince Nigerians beyond reasonable doubt that this is not going to be business as usual. Unfortunately, that has not been a core center of the communication from the government in terms of restoring or consolidating confidence on Nigerians, on the ability of government to be transparent, to be accountable. And then again, you also have the challenges of the fact that the timing that has come around this issue is a very difficult timing for many Nigerians because the hardship, the inflation, the collapse of virtually every purchasing power in this country, especially for middle-level people, has also been exaggerated by the economic hardship. So to come up with this, definitely you have to contend with the reaction that Nigerians are going to be making. But I think, it is very important that Nigerian government demonstrates this accountability framework, because when you have a weak oversight of government expenditure, it becomes difficult for people to actually have their trust. As it is now, the National Assembly that is supposed to be carrying out oversight on public expenditure tracking or spending is very weak. You can imagine, even if the law they have passed is not allegedly what is being gazetted, how will they be able to assert themselves? So these are issues that, you really need to do a lot to, justify and create that confidence for Nigerians to support government, because government needs the revenue. If you don't pay taxes, ideally, government will not have money to finance development. And therefore, it is necessary that the citizens, those who are supposed to pay taxes, they should be able to pay taxes. In other countries, we have seen how taxes are utilized for the benefit of the people in those countries. We have seen how infrastructural development, through the use of taxation, have been helpful in many instances.
But all right, Mr. Wow. Mr. Wow, if you can hear me, I just want to ask. I mean,
I can hear you.
Yeah, we know it's obvious that the people do not really trust the government or the government's intention, which is why you hear a lot of criticism to whatever policy the government brings, especially in this tax issue, which it has to do with the people's money. But how do we go past this to rekindle a good working relationship between the government and the people, for the government to be able to win the trust of the people? You talked about the removal of fuel subsidy, and a lot of people have asked, okay, so we've seen FAC increase over the months, after that removal, but can governments boldly come out to say, this is how much we have saved since we removed subsidy, this is what we have used it for, these are the states, that have gotten this and this. I mean, government at all levels. So I guess the people do have a history, for not trusting the government. But how do we change the narrative? That's actually what's really important at this time.
So you can change this narrative through a number of issues. One, ensure public disclosure of expenditure in this country so that Nigerians can see exactly what you have collected and what you have used that money for. That's number one. Number two, clearly link these funds with the measurable developmental financing in this country. Number three, ensure that you reform the fiscal policies in the country that will ensure that it is no longer a burden to Nigerians. I mean, we keep on borrowing every time, even after you withdraw the subsidy on the petroleum product. You keep on borrowing, and this borrowing, as far as Nigerians are concerned, are not able to see tangible, benefit for the Nigerian people, even though you say it is going to be for the benefit of the Nigerian people. So government must demonstrate in a very clear and patriotic manner that they are not going to just use this to finance personal, interest, or to, use it for diversion of public taxpayers' money. Again, you need to strengthen the legislative and civil society oversight. This is one way in which you can actually restore confidence on Nigerians that this new tax law, if implemented fully, will actually be, oversighted, to be tracked, and the audit, the public audit, will also be made available so that Nigerians can begin to have confidence in their government, because it's a very disturbing thing that the citizens don't believe in government. It's very disturbing thing that the citizens don't trust their leaders. You cannot run a country where citizens don't believe, they see everything as a lie, as a deception, as a misrepresentation. It is not good. We need government, public officials must make effort to ensure that they bridge that mistrust. And they can only bridge that mistrust when they also adjust the way they sometimes recklessly spend public taxpayers' money. You cannot be borrowing money and then be running a very lavish and expected spending that we are seeing in this country. You can only, restore confidence on Nigerians when they see truly that you care for them. For example, many Nigerians are not able to access healthcare system in this country. Many Nigerians are not able to even access education, quality education. Many Nigerians are not able to access even drinking water. Many Nigerians are not able to sleep because of the insecurity in the country. And if you are actually using these taxes to help improve the life of Nigerians, I am telling you, Nigerians will be the vanguard for encouraging, tax collection in Nigeria. But as long as Nigerians, they see that, every now and then you borrow money and this money, no explanation. Even the lawmakers that are approved for this loan, they have no idea, they have no details on what has been done. Definitely you will deepen this, concern that Nigerians are having. So I think it is possible for government to overcome this,
from the other side now, we've talked of what the government should be doing, but I believe the people also have the responsibility. I mean, you can't just wait and say, oh, the government is not telling us what they're going to do, so we'll just sit down like that and maybe just kick against the law or the taxes, which we know is a necessity. So what, from your perspective, can the people be doing, or should the people be doing at this time, especially since it's a new dawn of the new tax era in the country?
Like I mentioned earlier on, many Nigerians supported government, when government wanted to do this tax reform, because we believe that the multiple taxation, the unfair taxation that you see in this country, and virtually almost every government agency has turned, to a revenue collection. Many Nigerians believe that there is need for government to harmonize the various laws and to bring more sanity into the taxation administrative justice system in the country. And therefore, Nigerians supported, in my opinion, the effort of government to do this tax reform. However, this is democracy, and if you are doing it for the interests of the people and for the nation, you must listen to the people, you must listen to Nigerians, so that areas that they have concern, you either clarify or you either address those concerns that they have. But you cannot do it, as if you are having a personal interest without, actually listening to the people. Remember, even during the military regime, they also, listen to public concern, even though in many instances, after the public, engagement, they still do what they wanted to do. But at least for the fact that people had the right to express themselves and to make suggestions, concrete suggestions that will even strengthen what government, is doing, is very key. So if you don't take people into confidence about that, and if your communication is very poor, then you continue to create, opportunity for rumors, misinformation, distortion, and what have you. So that is why it is important that government is very clear about this, and government should see the concern that Nigerians are expressing on this. You cannot have a law that is already creating legitimacy problems. You have to address that. And for the fact that you insisted you must, implement it, even though there are this legitimate concern of the inconsistency in the law passed by the National Assembly and the one gazetted for, it creates also concern. And therefore, government, I don't think, need to be in a hurry without addressing this legitimacy concern. And I think Nigerian people are happy to support government, because Nigerians, they need water, they need clean water, they need peace, they need quality education, they need quality healthcare system. And if the Nigerian people are being told and communicated that it is only when you contribute your quota that you can gain this, I believe that Nigerian people will do that.
All right.
I have been,
so let me ask.
Advocating for tax justice in the country for a very long time.
Let me ask this. A lot of people have said that before now, it seems a lot of Nigerians are not concerned about what the government is doing with the revenue that they get from the country, doing with even the loans, the debts, that you talked about. So, but with this new law, when people are compelled, to be a part of the tax net, that perhaps we will get more Nigerians showing concern, asking questions, and following the activities of government to know exactly if the government is doing right or wrong. I wonder if you agree with this notion.
Well, it is only when people are productive, when people are able to generate income, when people are able to, contribute to the economy, that you can actually even tax them. When they are, jobless and they have nothing doing and the economy is not productive, it's only consumption you see, that's why you continue to borrow, then it becomes difficult for, for you to achieve that. But I believe that if the government had created conducive atmosphere for Nigerians to either gain jobs, by creating, small scale, medium scale, industry, Nigerians will be able to gain, gainful job, and they must be contributing, to the government. For example, now workers automatically they pay their taxes. Those who usually don't pay are big men and women. We can see that based on even the research we conducted with Sisla and Oxfam, we saw that large chunk of big men and women, they don't pay tax. Big people in government, they don't pay tax. Everything is provided for them, So the burden is more of like on the ordinary person who is struggling for survival. And that is why we are insisting on tax justice. Market women, the multiple taxation they, encounter if you go to market. Woman that is selling just ordinary granite and akra, come and see how much harassment, how much extortion that she suffer or that they suffer. So that is why we are out there to support government to ensure that we have tax justice that will be done transparently with accountability and measurable development to see that, look, as a result of paying these taxes, your life can be improved or it has been improved. And if the government is disclosing information, closing the communication gap, ensuring that everything is actually disclosed and you have access to information that you can actually track things. And the legislature at the state and the national level are also doing their bit. The media is also helping to ensure that they investigate some of those issues, especially if there's bridges. Civil society continuously educating and creating awareness for Nigerian people to pay and support government to collect tax and ensure that they demand accountability on what their money is being used. I believe that will be better off. At the state level, that is where you even have more challenges because the voices of accountability is very low at the state level. And that is why we have, as CISLAC, we have established a tax justice network across the country to ensure that we support policy programs of government and ensuring that Nigerians are educated on the issues around the tax and its fairness and why they must contribute tax to government so that development can happen in the country.
All right.
So we have, launched virtually in every state. We have what we call tax justice and governance network, which is primarily helping to raise consciousness around issues of taxation, around issues of use of taxation, around issues of ensuring that people must pay tax for government to be able to do development in the various tiers of government that we are.
All right.
These are the kind of contribution that we are making.
All right, Mr.
And
Awal.
we are not being paid. We are not consultant to government. We are just patriotic to ensure that we encourage government to do the right thing and
all right, Mr. Awal.
do the right thing.
All right, Mr. Awal. Thank you so much for your patriotism, and we do appreciate your contribution. Of course, we do hope that this new tax law, by implementation, would solve those problems and be able to close that gap between the government and the people. Thank you so much, Executive Director, Civil Society Legislative Advocacy Center, CISLAC. It's also the head of Transparency International in Nigeria, Mr. Awal Musa. All right, let's take a break now. When we come back, other burning issues in the economy will be our conversation. Please stay with us. All right, so welcome back. Now, let's discuss some of the issues in the economy. One of those is a lot of economists believe that the successes that we had in the macro economy last year was because there was a reduction in the money supply. We'll find out what financial derivatives thinks about this. Another issue we have here, a manager from financial derivatives company, Dumebi Oluwole. Miss Dumebi, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Amy.
Mrs. Dumebi, actually Mrs. Oluwole, so let's not get too familiar. Well, I spoke to Mr. Ruwani, late last year, and he attributed the issue of money supply to some of the successes we saw in the macroeconomic data. So I wonder what else you can tell us about that.
I mean, we have seen money supply growth actually decline, coming from 2024 up until last year. And like he mentioned, the reason why we saw this, significant decline is coming from about 75%. At some point, even got to 79%, right, in money supply growth. Now we're down to about 10-12%, right? So that's a significant drop compared to where we're coming from. And when you break down the money supply numbers, you realize that, okay, cash in circulation was one of the factors, right, that was driving money supply growth.
And that fits into inflation, I guess.
Of course, that also feeds into inflation. And then you look at the other side of it, where there was some issue of ways and means advances that, propped up the money supply in circulation and, of course, money supply growth. And then you also look at money market liquidity, that is the liquidity within the money market, interbank market liquidity. And that, of course, also pushed up money supply growth. But due to some of the changes that we have seen on the monetary policy side, that number has declined. However, when you look at
would that be the hawkish stance of the MPC?
Oh yes, of course. So when there's an increase in interest rate, remember the simple definition of inflation is too much money chasing too few goods. And when you look at how monetary policy is supposed to help reduce that too much money in circulation, is through setting adjustments with money supply or monetary policy tools. And then that's where you see things like OMO issuances, where it's pretty much cash in exchange for a security. And that way we're reducing the cash moving in circulation. Then you also consider the increase in interest rates, where that of course made fixed income securities more attractive, and that to some extent is supposed to help mop up the excess liquidity, excess cash in the system, where there's an exchange again, of course, for cash in place of tradable securities. Then you also consider other aspects like the central bank also adjusting the CRR, adjusting the asymmetric corridor to somewhat contain that money market liquidity, keep interbank interest rates high so that banks are incentivized to, reduce the cash that is within the system. So those are some of the measures that we have seen.
But at the elementary parts,
yes,
do we see a factor such as more Nigerians adopting e-transactions?
Yes,
I
was getting to that. Yes, I was getting to that. So we have seen that, of course, support the decline in cash in circulation. Pretty much by the time if you check yourself as of today, how much cash do you really have, with you? So that ideology, all of those technological changes that we have seen and adaptation we've also seen at the consumer level, right? Those are some of the things that we have seen reduce the cash in circulation. There's a very strong adoption, through e-payment channels. When you look at NIP, that's transfers. You also look at POS movements as well. We see all of these changes.
And we saw new guidelines for POS operators towards the end
of the year, by December 2. Yeah, that was the circular on cash withdrawals. And it wasn't necessarily only for POS, pretty much. It was primarily on cash withdrawals, right? And what that was supposed to do, what that is trying to do as well, is kind of course, contain that movement of cash within the system, because there is now a processing fee if you extend or you go beyond your cash withdrawal limit, for an individual, which are, I think, 500,000 naira for a week. Per week, and then 5 million naira for businesses. When you put all of this side by side, the recent tax reforms that have come into play and how that is, of course, reorientating the entire macroeconomy, we see that there's more leeway for people to adopt more technology into their business operations and into even their daily lives, right? So less cash handling, more of transfers, and of course more neat transfers. I mean, we're seeing a lot of memes go around.
But I mean, let's not be all negative.
Of course.
During the year, we did see the movement of fintechs. From, I think, to NPS, that's what they call it, which is supposed to, and even the banks themselves. I know there was a time there was a whole lot of disruption,
yes,
in the banking system for e-transactions. But after that, things calmed down.
Yes.
So I guess technologically things are better, and
yes,
people should trust the system,
yes,
even more.
I mean, there's a lot of disruption going around, both on an industry level and on a policy level, right? And those are the things that, of course, excite people like myself when we see all of these changes happening. So you're right in that Of course, there was some change that happened within the banking. I mean, people, of course, felt it. I felt it. We couldn't transfer for a while and all that. But then we're also seeing
their money
some
stock.
But I mean, all of those changes are now, getting better. And remember that when the reforms started happening, when we start from when the telecom tariffs, when conversation around telecom tariffs came into play, that was the major one. And, the conversation, even I came here and said that the expectation is that after all of is said and done, the expectation is that the linked sectors that benefit from a better telecoms environment or a better telecoms industry, we were likely to see better services. And pretty much that's what we're beginning to experience. Can it be better? Of course. Will it keep getting better? The expectation is that it does, right? So because if one industry is doing better, the expectation is that the linked sectors are also doing better. And financial services is a huge beneficiary of when the telecom industry is doing better, and that's what we're beginning to experience. The other bit of it is the disruption from fintechs. Now, everybody knows about market share. Fintechs are literally addressing the need of the common man, from POS merchants to, you being able to open a bank account just with your phone number, right? And we're also seeing banks try to meet up with this pace. We're also seeing deposit money banks trying to meet up with this pace. At the end of the day, healthy competition is what drives market competitiveness, and definitely continually to push for better policies, better consumer protection, and ideally a better macroeconomic environment for both industries, companies, and consumers.
So another thing that we saw in 2025, which I don't know if we'll see in 2026, was at the beginning of the year, the government was very active in the fixed income market.
Yes.
And we saw the yields were really high and all of that. We have, of course, I think we have about 23 trillion deficits in this year's budget also. I wonder if we will see the government active to maybe at the beginning of the year and then maybe cool towards the end of the year.
I mean, we do think that's going to happen. We do think that that's going to happen. Reason being that there is, number one, the likelihood to reduce international debt exposure, right? So that we're not so exposed. And number two, our debt servicing obligations are not as high. So the chances are that the government would want to raise debt from the domestic market. So we might see an increase in T-bill issuances, more bond auctions. I mean, at the end of the year, between October and December, we did see, bond auctions come up, and we expect those to happen. One thing to do note is that we might see more industry-focused bond issuance. For instance, infrastructure bonds. Might see things like that, green bonds, things like that are supposed to, number one, encourage some kind of fresh capital to come into the system. Reason being is that the government, we have seen, is trying to push on itself for international funds to come in, but international funds to come in a way that international players want to invest. And that's when you talk about climate financing. So things like green bonds for certain sectors, especially maybe towards the oil and gas industry, or even the tech industry, might see those things come up. Infrastructure bonds as well, likely to be a case where we would see an increase in that coming up. We're also likely to see, again, fixed income T-bill issuances coming up. But the interest rates on those, the yields on those T-bills might not be as high as we experienced in 2025, at the beginning of 2025. Reason being that we're now operating in a seemingly different monetary policy environment. So we do not expect rates to significantly decline or the central bank to be extremely dovish, but we do expect that we might see some status quo, minimal rate reductions, because why inflation is already, inflation is declining, at least from what the MBS numbers are saying. And that consolidation between monetary policy and fiscal policy has to be there for investors, to signal to investors that we are operating in a market-friendly environment.
What about the Naira?
Yeah.
Where do we expect
the Naira?
Have we gotten to our best at under 1.5?
Well, I would say that there's a lot more at play when it comes to the Naira, especially when you consider all of the dynamics that are happening with the international and geopolitical environment, and how that would impact the Naira going forward. But we do think that I do think that the Naira will stabilize. So I think we're at a point
at the point
we are currently. Yes, okay. I think at the FX market we're at a point of stability, not really a point of aggressive appreciation, and I think the markets are fine with that. Reason being is, investors, business owners now have more trajectory to plan. So you do know that when there's an increase in demand, right, the markets respond to an increase in supply. So there's not so much of a gap, right, between the parallel market rate and the official market. I mean, towards peak periods, like we did see in December, where the parallel market was around 1,409 to 1,485, and we saw the official rate at 1,435, 1,430. We did see that gap kind of widening, but there were several factors that explained that, and so it didn't rattle the markets in any way. Pretty much all I'm saying is that we expect it to be more of a stability than aggressive appreciation, except the fundamentals around geopolitics and our exports significantly change. Those are the caveats on there.
What about commodities? I mean, last year was much celebrated. We saw bags of rice flying everywhere in December. What do we expect?
So for commodities, expect that we might see this trend continue. Remember that the trend of an increase in commodities and then a decline in prices. Seasonality will still take its toll. We do expect that to happen. During the planting season, we most likely would see prices, rise. Certain commodities will be scarce during their planting season. I always talk about planting because that's a very, very core commodity to my heart.
To your heart.
But then, so when the season for planting happens, we expect it to, be scarce in the market and price to increase. And especially because we have not yet fixed the fundamentals around logistics, around increasing supply around the year. But with imports being more managed and we are seeing more value addition happen, though at a slow pace, happen across the agric value chain, we expect at least the staple commodities like rice, yam, to constantly be in the market. And remember, we are in a very interesting year. 2026 is an election year, so we do think that there will be efforts.
And there are fears too that, I mean, this progress, whether slow and steady, we might call it, that we're seeing might be disrupted this year. But we hope that our political leaders will give us more attention than their political careers.
I mean, I will say this, that we are in a very, very interesting time where politics now really define the macroeconomic environment. I will say also that it's still quite early to really say how things are going to really be disrupted or not be disrupted, but the expectation is that this is going to be a very defining year for the Nigerian economy on a macroeconomic level and even on a socioeconomic level. And both business owners, investors, and consumers, of course, have to watch very clearly and carefully, and of course plan themselves accordingly.
All right, Dumebi, thank you so much for that. Manager, Financial Derivatives Company, Dumebi Oluwole.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, let's take a break now. When we come back, we'll go global with Ladi Williams. Please stay with us. let's see what's happening in the global scene with Laddie Williams. Laddie?
Fantastic. Good morning.
Officially, Happy New Year. This is the first time I'm seeing you on air.
This is the first time I'm meeting. Last time I saw you was
last year.
Last year.
365 days ago.
Oh, so far. Good to see you again.
Good to see you too.
Happy New Year. All right, let's get to what's playing out now. See, it's all about NVIDIA at this point. NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang has unveiled what could be the next big leap in artificial intelligence, introducing the company's new generation AI platform and laying out a bold vision for what he calls physical AI, machines that don't just think, but can see, move, and act in the real world. Speaking at a major tech event, CES, Huang said AI is moving beyond chatbots and screens into factories, cars, and robots. Take a listen.
Today, we're announcing Alpamayo, the world's first thinking, reasoning autonomous vehicle AI. Alpamayo is trained end-to-end, literally from camera in to actuation out. The camera in, lots and lots of miles that are driven by itself, where we human drive it, using human demonstration. And we have lots and lots of miles that are generated by Cosmos. In addition to that, hundreds of thousands of examples are labeled very, very carefully so that we could teach the car how to drive. Alpamayo does something that's really special. Not only does it take sensor input and activates steering wheel, brakes, and acceleration, it also reasons about what action it is about to take. It tells you what action it's going to take, the reasons by which it came about that action, and then, of course, the trajectory.
I was Jensen Huang yesterday, and we know tech investors love to listen to what he has to say. And looking at the stock, yes, it did finish in a red, about 0.39% down. But looking at the pre-market this morning, it's up. We'll see if we'll see a recovery there. To other stories now, we see for microchip technology is showing fresh signs of a turnaround with its shares rising after the company reported quarterly sales well above its previous guidance. The chip maker says demand is recovering across most of its end markets. Inventory pressures are easing, and its recovery plan is starting to deliver results. And Tesla is stepping up pressure in China's brutal electric vehicle price war, rolling out zero interest and ultra low interest loans on some of its most popular models in a bid to revive slowing sales. The move comes just days after data showed Tesla's shipments in China fell last year, while local rival BYD continues to pull ahead. With global sales under pressure, margins shrinking, and competition intensifying, the incentives highlight how tough the battle has become for the world's most valuable EV maker, even as Elon Musk looks to AI and robotics for future growth. We see shares of Ross stores have hit a record high, touching nearly $186, as investors share strong earnings and growing confidence in the retailer's turnaround strategy. The stock is up about 20% over the past year, helped by better than expected profits, stronger store sales, and improving margins. Analysts have responded by lifting their price targets, citing better products, smarter marketing, and ongoing store upgrades, with management also announcing board leadership transition. The rally signals rising optimism that Ross can keep winning over cost-conscious shoppers in a tough retail environment. Obviously, the metals market's on fire at the start of 2026, with copper futures hitting a new record above $13,000 a ton, as the fears of possible U.S. tariffs squeeze global supplies. Inventories that once cushioned the market are now tied up in the United States, leaving the rest of the world short. Aluminum is also at multi-year highs, and the broader metals index is at its strongest level since 2022, with prices surging and trading flows shifting. The rally is sending a fresh inflation warning signal through global markets. And looking at other markets now, we see Bitcoin starting off steady today. It's lost its footing in 2026, rising modestly as global risk appetite improves. But fresh concerns about major corporate holders are keeping gains in check. The world's biggest Bitcoin holder, Strategy, was just disclosed more than $17 billion in unrealized losses, highlighting the pressure from last year's price slump. While broader crypto prices are edging higher, they're still lagging the rally in tech stocks, leaving investors weighing renewed risk appetite against lingering balance sheet worries in the crypto space.
All right, Ladi, just before you run away there, we need to celebrate our markets. We saw the market was on fire yesterday. Right. So I know at intraday, during Business Incorporated, we saw the market at 99,000. And then before you know it, at the close of trade, it was 101 trillion naira for the market cap. That was a raise. Santa came in late, but Santa came after all.
Yeah, Santa was in this market, as in the local market, because how do you define a Santa rally? The last few trading days of December and the first few trading days of January, all in the green. Yeah. So we had a Santa rally, in 2025.
But we didn't make it to the first three.
So the first three.
Best performing, I mean.
Yeah, definitely. But, when you look at, emerging and frontier markets, definitely the NGX is topping that. But it's a fantastic run, in 2025.
Yeah, so I think if we didn't have that pullback,
right,
that major pullback following the misconception around the capital gains tax, we lost over 4 trillion. I think it was 4.6 trillion in just one day. I believe we would have done better than being the fifth best performing.
Maybe would have scaled to maybe number 3 or second position. But it just goes to show you how important these tax laws are, and how some people are getting it wrong. Majority don't really understand it, even though we're trying our best to educate everyone. But at some point, Mr. Bismarck Rouhani did say, we will all understand it when we start tasting it, when we start eating it. So at this point,
when you see the tax being removed from your earnings or something.
Yeah.
But I mean, you need to know so that you don't get cheated or you don't feel cheated. It's always better to get knowledge.
Yeah, because there's one going around now, looking at the LIRS. There's a withholding tax, when you're trying on rent. So that's for people that earn money from property. So a landlord now will say, you know what, you have to remit the withholding tax, to the tax man. If your rent is about 2 million, you're supposed to take 200,000 of that, then pay your landlord 1.8. But the landlord is going to accept that. So there's so much. This is, on the state level that's looking at the LIRS. It's a serious matter, because we know at the end of the day who's going to take the burden.
Exactly.
Is the tenant,
Yeah, but I mean, trust us here on Channels Television. We'll keep you informed, and we're going to touch on all of it to ensure that you know your rights and you know what's coming up for you. But Ladi, thank you so much.
Yeah, we're not going to get cheated.
Yes. And that's it on the program. Thank you so much for being a part of Business Morning. Nigeria's equity market is still in the green zone. We expect that to stay at least to intraday before investors start taking profits. And on the tax issue, it's a continuous conversation, and we'll keep you informed right here on Business Morning. I'm John Mekwa. Do have a great day.